Welcome back to PSC Tech Bytes. This week I will continue talking about the automated provisioning solutions that we already introduced last week. This solution is a solution to automate the provisioning of a site using a request form, an approval process, the provisioning in the backend using the provisioning engine, and a set of templates configurable for the end users. And it is based on a technology landscape which leverages both Microsoft 365 resources like SharePoint Online and Power Automate, as well as an Azure backend with an Azure function, and of course a bunch of PMP tooling in the solution. Today we will talk about the step 2 of this series of episodes, so we will see how to create the SPFX web part to create a request to provision a new site. So let's talk about this topic and let's understand why we want to create an SPFX web part first of all. Well, I decided to create a request form with an SPFX web part because I can host that web part in a Teams tab so that it will be really easy for the end users to just make a request in a tab inside Microsoft Teams and let the process run the automated approval flow and eventually, upon approval, create the actual site collection and provision the actual template onto the site collection. I'm going to use SharePoint Framework, the PMP property editor controls, as well as the PMP React components, and PMP.js to write the request item in the target list. So let me move to the demo environment and let me show how you can create such kind of client-side web part with SPFX. So let's start having a look at the end user experience for this client-side web part. This is the resulting client-side web part through which I can configure a bunch of properties for the site that I want to create. For example, I want to create my new site. I want to be the owner of the new site that is going to be created. And of course, you can make it even smarter and automatically detect who is the currently connected user. I can configure who will be the members for this new site collection that I'm going to create. I can select a type, which can be, for example, a communication site, a organization, which can be the HR department, and I will select a target template from the list of templates that I have in my infrastructural site collection, as you can remember. In fact, we have an infrastructural site collection that we defined in the previous episode, in which we have a couple of templates, which are the ones I just saw in the form, and I have a list of provisioning requests that I can use to create a new request. So by clicking on the request provisioning button, I will have a new item created in this list, as you can see, with the settings that I just selected from the UI of my client-side web part. So how did I build this client-side web part? Well, of course, I created a SharePoint Framework solution, and I decided to use the PMP Yeoman generator as the scaffolding tool. So I used the yo at PMP/SPFX statement to run the PMP scaffolding tool, the Yeoman generator for SharePoint Framework built by PMP. I selected to use the PMP React components, as well as the property editor controls, as well as PMP.js in the settings, and I selected to have a tenant-wide available solution, including all the settings for having my web part based on React components. So in the source code of my solution, here I have the generated web part, and the package solution, package.json file, you can see that I'm using the React controls for PMP and the property controls from PMP, as well as PMP.js. This is my web part, and in my web part, in the source code of my web part, I'm using a collection of properties which is based on the URL of the site from where I want to load the available templates and the URL of the site from where I want to get the list of requests. And in fact, in my web part, if I edit the settings of this tab, I can see that I have the URL of this target site where I can find the template and the library for the template, as well as the list, the settings for the list of provisioning requests configured for my web part. And in order to do that, in my web part, I'm simply defining in the get property pane configuration all of the property editor controls provided by PMP. So there will be the text field, there will be the list picker field editor, and all the other settings that I need to configure in the UI. And these property editor controls, as I said, are available in the PNP editor controls and are imported using this namespace, as you can see. Moreover, I configured a React component, which is my provisioning request component, to get as the input properties all of the settings that I configure in my web part, together with the context of the SharePoint Framework web part, and a few other things to make it possible to have a nice UI with a placeholder in order to configure my component when it is not yet configured. In the React component, which will do the actual creation of the provisioning request, I have a properties interface for the settings that I'm providing to the React component coming from the hosting client-side web part, as well as a state in which I will store the collection of available templates, all the settings of the provisioning request that I will store in the target list. So let's see how it works under the cover. First of all, when I create my provisioning request object, I'll configure the available flavors for a site, so a communication site or a team site, and in the constructor, I initialize the state of my object. Then, when component did mount or component will receive properties, I will get the available templates, so I will connect, as you can see here, using PNP.js, I create a new web object targeting the URL of the site, which includes the provisioning templates. I get the list of templates, the ID of the library which will contain the templates, and I get all of the items in that list, selecting the ID, the file, the title, and expanding the file object. So by doing that, I can create a collection of options which will include, as the key of every single option, the URL of the file which represents the template, and the title of the object for every single item, which will be the text showed to the user. Moreover, when I render the component, if I have proper configuration, if not, I will render just a placeholder, but if I have proper configuration, I will simply render the UI, so a text field for the title, a people picker control coming from the PNP React components to select the owners and the members of the site, a drop-down Office UI Fabric component to select the site type, a text field for the target organization, and another drop-down Office UI component for the template that I want to load. So whenever I change the value, for example, of the title or of the owners or of the members, I will accordingly update the state of my React component. So that when I'm ready, and when I will be ready and I will click on the provision button, I will simply enqueue my provisioning request, and I will do that by getting a reference to the website, which will be the one hosting the request list. I get that specific list by ID, and using PNP.js, I simply add a new item to the collection of items, providing the properties of the item that I want to create. And that's it. So really easy and simple, as long as you rely on the PNP property editor controls, PNP React components, and PNP.js to manage the content of the backend SharePoint Online site. Moreover, in order to have my client-side web part available as a theme tab, I also had to configure in the manifest of my web part that in the supported hosts, I want to support Themes tab as a supported host. And in the package solution.json file of my solution, I decided to have the solution tenant-wide available, so skip feature deployment equal true. By doing that, and by uploading my package into the app catalog of my target tenant, if I search for my specific solution, here you can see that I have my SPFX, let me see if I can find it, automated. Okay, here it is. This is my solution. My solution is tenant deployed, as you can see here. And I also selected the solution and click on the Syncs to Teams button in order to have the Teams tab manifest automatically registered in the target Teams, Microsoft Teams environment for my tenant. And that's it. As usual, thank you for watching this video. I hope you found it useful, and I'm really looking forward to seeing you next week with the next episode of this series. Thank you.